In this next video, I'm going to show you how to limit hip turn, backswing. Keep watching. Hey, it's Troy from Hitting It Solid here. Let's talk about limit hip turn, backswing and why we want to actually do that. So, because we know we actually need hip turn in the backswing, but having too much of a good thing is a bad thing when it comes to the golf swing. So when I'm talking about the hip turn, so if I'm set up to a ball here, I'll show you this from a couple of different angles. From down the line, when I make my backswing, my hips need to turn and my shoulders need to turn. Now, ideally, in a perfect swing, which obviously none of us have, we all have different backswings and that, we want our shoulders to turn a lot more relative to our hip turn. So for me, I like to try and get roughly about a 45-degree hip turn, which will be somewhere about there. And I like to turn my shoulders about 90 degrees. So from this angle here, for me, I'll look something like that. Now, why would I want to reduce the amount of hip turn? Well, where a lot of golfers get into problem is they turn their hips too much relative to how much their shoulders turn. So in an effort to get more power and a bigger turn, they'll turn their hips more. Now, ideally what you want to be doing is getting that extra bit of coil, which is that difference between hip turn and shoulder turn. So if you're turning your hips too much relative to your shoulders, it might look something like this. If I'm set up to a ball here, if you were to say turn your hips like maybe 60 or 70 degrees, and I've turned my shoulders in this example here roughly about the same. Turn my hips 60 to 70, I've turned my shoulders 60 to 70, I've got zero coil. You're in a lot of trouble there. You're not going to get a lot of power, lose a lot of consistency. So we've turned the hips too much relative to the shoulders. Now, turning your hips 50, 60 would be fine if you could turn your shoulders 100, 120, because the coil is that difference between the shoulder turn and the hip turn. However, if you're someone that doesn't have that flexibility to turn your shoulders that far, and you're using your hips to give you that bigger shoulder turn, you're much better off limiting the amount of hip turn and limiting that shoulder turn and increasing that differential, i.e. getting more coil. So one of the biggest reasons I see golfers doing this is purely its setup, and this is a really powerful, really simple thing that you can change today to fix up your hip turn. So if I'm set up to a ball here, most golfers I see that are doing this incorrectly with their hip turn, they'll have their feet, you can see here, pointing pretty much towards the ball, straight ahead. Now if you jump up out of your chair and test this out, I'll get rid of the club. If I have my feet pointing pretty much straight towards the camera, it's really easy for me to turn them virtually all the way pointing away from the target here. Really easy with my feet pointing straight on its setup. Now if I was to flare these slightly out on an angle and now try to turn my hips, I'm restricted. I can only sort of, I think my belly button's somewhere out here, I can only sort of turn this far, so I've really restricted my hip turn by making that one simple change to my setup. So if we grab a club, so the easy fix for this, and this is super powerful and so simple, is to flare your feet out at address. And what that will enable you to do is limit the amount your hips turn. And if you limit the amount your hips turn, you can then focus on getting a little bit more of that shoulder rotation and getting that differential between hips and shoulders, getting that coil again, to help you make a much better backswing. So just make that simple change to your setup that will limit the hip turn and the backswing and get you in a much better position to make better shots. If you have any questions or comments about that, please let me know. If this is something you are doing, make that small change to your setup. It will make a huge difference. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Click and watch the video on your screen now. It's going to go into more detail about how to coil in the backswing, which ties in really well with this video. If you want to learn how to play amazing golf, consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any other further questions or comments, please let me know. I will get back to every single one of you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.